I think it's very difficult to give what we don't have. And the more we're able to understand our own empathetic abilities, be empathetic with ourselves, be very kind about our own vulnerabilities and imperfections, that is more of the well we can draw upon when we are with other people or leading a team.
Hello, and welcome to Care to Lead, the podcast where leadership isn't just a title, it's an action. I'm your host, executive coach, Cynthia Corsetti, and today we dive deep into how empathy impacts leadership. And this is near and dear to my heart. So join us as we explore innovative strategies, share insights from experts, and empower you to lead with purpose and heart. Today, our guest is CM Conway. CM Conway is a dynamic filmmaker and a communications consultant, renowned for her transforming storytelling in a professional realm. Her acclaimed indie film, How to Successfully Fail in Hollywood, is available on major streaming platforms. Humorously, she explores the themes of failure and resilience in Hollywood, mirroring her own experiences. It's not just a film, but it's a journey of friendship and finding oneself. Contemplating her film's success, her podcast on platforms like Apple's and iTunes dives into the mishaps and learnings of various creatives. Beyond her screen work, Conway is celebrated for amplifying the narratives of women in underrepresented communities, making significant media appearances and contributions to diverse storytelling. And with that, what did I miss in your introduction?
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Cynthia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Did I miss anything, Sam?
No, that was aptly put. Really appreciate it.
So we are talking about empathy, and I loved everything you said about empathy. I'm going to dive into that because I think that empathy is one of those words that everyone says, yes, you need to have empathy. I'm very empathetic. I have empathy, but I think that empathy starts within. Like, you really have to figure out your own stuff before you can empathize with someone else. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
I believe that is so true. I think it's very difficult to give what we don't have. And the more we're able to understand our own empathetic abilities, be empathetic with ourselves, be very kind about our own vulnerabilities and imperfections, that is more of the well we can draw upon when we are with other people or leading a team. Absolutely.
So tell me what acting in Los Angeles has really taught you about empathy.
Well, when you're inhabiting another character, you have to have extreme empathy and understanding for another. To be able to walk into another person's shoes, understand how they feel, how they think. You really are wearing someone else's coat, for lack of a better word. Also, there's so much rejection in Hollywood. Our film, How to Successfully Fail in Hollywood, really speaks to the artists that are really trying to get against all odds and make their dreams come true. And so there's lots of rejection that's built into the system of any artistic trade in the industry. And you really have to be empathetic with that process and with yourself when you are hitting walls or not feeling like you're getting traction, because the odds are a bit stacked against the artist. And so you have to really find your own way within that realm and be true to yourself. And so I believe empathy truly allows that process to unfold in a much more authentic way as an artist. So it's a wonderful tool to hone your own empathy within inhabiting characters as a filmmaker, certainly. And then as the process itself, the artistic process.
That's really interesting. I'm especially interested to find out if there was ever a character that you played that you found it more difficult than another to find empathy for that character and become that character.
Absolutely. There are characters that may have larger flaws than others. And so really being able to understand why that person thinks the way they do, what was their upbringing, what was their background. And There was definitely more challenging characters than others. However, every process you go through really hones your craft and hones your skills. And it really allows you, and I didn't see this until much later, it really does allow you to be very empathetic with people because you're really learning how to see out of another person's eyes when you're acting. And when you're then carrying that over or bringing that over into your life, you sort of naturally have that skill set already honed. It's sort of a natural aptitude, or maybe it's just a skill that you are honing over time. And so it's really interesting when you're working on a character or working on a film or what have you, and then you're out in the real world, right? How those skills really transpose when you're interacting with people. I didn't see that until much later. And it's like, oh, wow, this is sort of an added benefit to acting I hadn't really planned for.
That's interesting. So your journey from acting in Hollywood to writing and producing your own film is I think it's kind of remarkable. So during this transition, what were some of the key lessons you learned about yourself and the industry that you might not have discovered if you didn't do that?
Well, I learned how to have a sense of humor because first, when I moved out of LA back to my roots here in the North Bay, California, I have a lot of natural light here where I'm at. So you'll see the light, kind of moving in and out, which I enjoy. I really love the quality of life here in the North Bay, California. So when I moved out, I wrote about my experiences, which gave me perspective. And being able to then write about my experiences in Hollywood, I was able to see and speak about it with other artists. And that also helped me understand there were a lot of common experiences that I had, even though I felt like I had failed, meaning I didn't really achieve the goals I wanted to. I didn't contribute to the landscape of film like I had wanted to. And what I learned while I was writing about it was having a sense of humor, how common the experience of failure is, how we can then use our own experiences and failures as grist for the mill. And so I not only learned so much about what I gained through all those experiences, but it really prepared me as a filmmaker. It was my first film, How to Successfully Fail in Hollywood. And so I had no idea how much I had been absorbing. I mean, I had studied filmmaking on the side, but nothing on the level of a feature film. So really learning to trust myself, learning how to dive in, learning that all those skills that I had actually honed over a decade, by the way, really started to kick in, and really being able to trust myself, and also kind of having empathy for my past self, because it's like, no, it's okay. This was all an experience that I really believe prepared me to make this film. And of course, I had a lot of amazing experiences. And as Oprah says, if you enjoy the process, it's not a failure. But it really did prepare me to make this film that speaks to so many artists that are like 95% of the artists that are really trying to either make it or just make a living at what they do.
So you talk a lot about the experiences that you wrote about, but was there anything in particular that inspired you to turn this personal experience into a screenplay and eventually a film?
That's a really good question. I would say I felt like once I had written the screenplay and then I had decided to make the film, it was so important for me to not only have representation in the film. We have a wonderful actor, Adrian Gilbert, who authentically represents the gay Latinx community, which is the best friend of the protagonist, Ellie, which is portrayed by myself. And so representation was really important to me, but also speaking to the artists that are hitting that bat every day, trying to make it, going on auditions, pursuing their dreams. It takes a tremendous amount of courage and everyday fortitude to do that. And I really wanted to have a film dedicated to those artists, and also have a film that really embraces failure for all it's worth, because failure has kind of a social stigma in our society. And I wanted to just remove that stigma and look it dead in the eye and laugh. And that's what the film does. So it's a bit, threefold. Representation and diversity was really important for me in the film. Having a look at failure, embracing it and laughing, and then really representing artists, the unknown everyday artists that are working every day, speaking to their experience and sort of having a little fun along the way.
That's great. Can you share one of your experiences where failure turned into a really good opportunity for learning for you?
So let's see. On the last day of filming our film, the electricity went out in the small town, the small rural town we were filming in. I was so stunned and beside myself for a few minutes because when the electricity goes out, this is the last day of filming. A lot of people needed to leave the next day. We had stayed on the schedule at that point. We had pulled together as a team up to that point. Suddenly, it's just like everything goes black. And so it's raining outside. That's why the electricity went out, the weather and so forth. And I knew it could last days given the weather. This was a town I grew up in. And so when the electricity went out, it was this feeling of like, oh, we're not going to be able to finish this film. This is the ultimate failure. And then this part of me started kicking into gear that I was able to rely upon throughout the film and throughout my life, quite frankly. This ability to be able to focus on the solution and not the problem. And also being able to trust the team around me. And so, of course, as a director, I'm the director and the writer and the editor, the executive producer of the film. I had my eye on really leading and so forth and including the team. However, in that moment, it was amazing, great learning experience of like really allowing other people to lead as much as I was leading and really trusting their abilities and their skills. And so Lisa Stoll, our cinematographer, stepped in. Daniel Hess, our wonderful sound recordist and mixer. All of a sudden, everyone started contributing their ideas. And so it's like, if you allow that help, if you allow yourself to be led as a leader, and if you also trust your team around you, such a profound experience and trust, because there was a lot of equipment that just was working on limited batteries for a while, but we all just like pulled together as a team. We started filming this dream sequence that didn't have sound. I knew it would be added in post-production. And then a few hours later, the electricity went on. A little miracle had happened because we were sort of under the assumption it was going to be out all day. And so I felt like it was like a sign because it really did feel like a mini miracle of just trust the people around you, trust your team. They will surprise you in miraculous ways.
I love that. What you do, you are always emphasizing equality, inclusivity, and diversity. So how do you approach these things in your storytelling? And why do you believe they're crucial today more than ever before?
I just feel representation is very important. It's very important for people to see people they relate to on the screen. And we have a diverse world and we should represent it. I am particularly passionate about just representing populations that are not typically represented in film or not commonly or currently, constantly, regularly depicted in film. Women's stories are very important to me. Minority stories are very important to me. We simply have a diverse world and we need to represent it as much as possible. It's always been important to me, quite frankly. And it's just very important. You know, the medium of film is so important. It has such a profound ability to impact the way we think and feel about others. And so if we see others depicted on the screen that maybe we're not regularly around or exposed to or know, and then we see that character depicted in a compassionate, empathetic way. Our character, Ben, in the film, beautifully portrayed by Adrian Gilbert. He brought such heart to the role. And to me, it wasn't a stereotypical role of a gay man. It was a lot like the roles of gay men that I know. They're just these beautiful people. And so I really wanted to stay away from any, tropes or stereotypes. And he becomes a real guiding force to Ellie, the protagonist in the film. So again, just being able to depict even the gay community, which they're sort of fighting for their human rights right now in various states. And so it's very important to humanize those around us on film. And so people can feel more empathy when they are perhaps interact with those populations in the real world.
Yeah, that's something that I'm very passionate about as well. And I think it's just so important what you're doing, because normalizing and just seeing people as people and not as people with a label is needed so much in our society today. Like almost, I think almost more than anything else. And that just ties into empathy. And little things like the Modern Family show years ago, like that started maybe, and Will and Grace, it started normalizing. But you're right, it did it in a more of a stereotypical way, and not the real gay humans that are in my life, right? So normalizing and letting people see that they're just people. They're people, you're people, we're all the same. And whether it's the LGBT community or any other minority or women or underserved, we have to start normalizing that. And that is how empathy is going to spread into the world. And so what you're doing is so amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a soapbox. I just love what you're doing.
Yes, and so you're so right. And there were shows, even in the so actually had a gay character. It was kind of like a sitcom. There's so many, Queer as Folk, Orange is the New Black, certainly Sex and the City. They have now, in their new iteration of their show, they have more diversity and inclusion, although they did have a gay character, Stanford, in the original one. So yeah, there's been a lot of great kind of pioneers along the way. And so it's really nice to see, like, say, a show like Will and Grace, which, was very popular, that it just totally normalized it, that it became very, very mainstream and normalized. I love that. I love that term. Very well put.
So what is your favorite thing about what you're doing right now? So you've done this film and you're out there promoting it and getting it out there. Like, what's next? What are you loving right now? What's keeping you motivated?
It's been really lovely to see the response to the film. We had we had local and national press. It was such an amazing grassroots effort that made this film possible. A lot of local businesses in Sonoma County in the Bay Area are an amazing cast and crew. So just really seeing how people connect to the film, even sort of share, are feeling moved to share their personal failures with me, which helped our podcast of the same name, How to Successfully Fail in Hollywood, as you mentioned, evolve, where folks are sharing their personal failures. So it's kind of created this little movement that I didn't really anticipate. You share your own story, and the personal really is universal, meaning it resonates if you're true in your storytelling. And right now I'm writing a script that's in development called Courtship that is really exciting to me. And it's essentially a romantic comedy with dramatic courtroom elements. And so it's Courtship. There is a little bit of a fun little play on words there. And it is about involving a case of a queer woman of color and two jurors that become interested in each other, but that are opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's sort of like, how do we find our humanity in a sea of influences? How do we do that? And so the film, and it's also, a comedy, but it's also very poignant. And so I'm kind of the prior film that I made sort of inspired me to kind of continue. And we're just really right now, just sort of in the development phase. Our website is courtshipfilm.com if anyone's interested in learning more about it. But it does sort of let's continue the storytelling, let's continue the representation, and let's take it a step further.
I love that. In your article, we talked about 5 things that leaders can do to become more empathetic. And one of the skills that you mentioned is deep listening. So I'm curious, in your film work and in your screenwriting, how much listening to others do you have to do? Because are you just creating on your own, or how much is listening deeply impacting what you do?
That's a wonderful question. There's a lot of work I'm doing on my own when I'm writing, a lot of preparation I'm doing along with a team in pre-production. And of course, then you really need to start turning on your listening ears during that process, because then you're involving people that are very good at what they do. And they're now helping evolve your project into something much bigger than you could possibly imagine. That was definitely the case with so many crew members, cast members, where they would kind of say, well, gosh, I kind of see it like this. Like, what do you think about this? And so you just have to really listen as a director, an executive producer, and say, okay, does this fit into the vision, or does this expand the vision? Or is this not a fit? Or maybe we could kind of use it in another way. So lots of listening during the pre-production and production phase, post-production and editing. I'm the editor. And so, but I had a wonderful collaboration with Hope Levy, who lended a lot of her original songs to the film, and we collaborated on original songs. That was a wonderful kind of listening experience because she's a wonderful songwriter and storyteller in song. And so, so I would say those were the sort of stages where listening becomes crucial because you're dealing with folks that are really contributing to the vision of your film. And it really behooves you to listen. And as the leader, you have to be able to decipher, wow, does this really contribute something that is a part of the overall vision? Or is this something maybe we can transmute or transform or utilize in another way? And so the listening skills become very vital as a filmmaker.
You also mentioned compassionate communication. So I'm curious how you bring compassionate communication onto the screen so you can role model it for others. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, so you mean sort of like how the actors might be demonstrating it, like on screen in the story?
Yeah, when you're writing the screenplay, how are you bringing that in to show?
So the character Ben in the film is an incredibly good listener and compassionate communicator, and was really written that way in the film. For the protagonist, Ellie, she's going through a lot of experiences as he is, but he's a real model for her in a lot of ways. And the way he listens, the way he reflects what she says back to him, this hit their friendship. The film is also an ode to those friends that keep us going when the tide gets a little low. And so that was a character that I specifically crafted in the writing process and then on the screen, and then brought like remarkably to life with the actor Adrian Gilbert in a soulful way that I could not have even imagined. And so he really just puts his soul into the role. And it's such a wonderful demonstration for those watching it on screen, how he communicates with the character Ellie and their communications with each other. And she actually becomes more selfless at kind of towards the end, because of course she's sort of wrapped up in her own little world, and she evolves too through this friendship and through his modeling. And so hopefully folks can kind of also just, take away great little gems, when watching the characters in the story as well. Or people have expressed that they have. So it's just, I always get tickled when I hear that.
That's awesome. What's the biggest lesson that you want your films to teach? And I know there's multiple and a lot of nuances to it, but if you were just to boil it down, what's that one thing?
Embracing our own flubs, mishaps, our imperfections, being able to embrace them. As I had mentioned earlier, a lot of people, especially in the industry, they don't like to talk about failure. With a lot of the Instagram influencers, with social media, everything, it's easy to kind of get wrapped into a world where we want everything to be perfect. And, like here I am, I'm in a natural room. The lighting isn't perfect. It's okay. Really embracing our imperfections, and not only embracing them, which the characters do in the film, or really are on the journey to doing, and embracing their own uniqueness. That's another aspect that was really important in the film, embracing your own imperfections, but also how is it that you connect to your own true north? How do you do that? What happens when you don't get what you want to get? And so the film is really a process of not only embracing your own imperfections, but that process is actually a way to use up your slip-ups as stepping stones to where the gold resides. And I feel that when we not only just embrace our own imperfections and allow other people, be empathetic with other people who are not perfect. We're all imperfect. Who hasn't fallen on their face before? We actually can utilize that whole process in a way that unfolds something so much more authentic and beautiful in human relations, in filmmaking, in a story that we see on the screen. So that I would say that those are the key messages. Yeah.
So that makes me think a little bit as you were speaking, young people today that are just inundated with social media and perfection and so on. I don't know that they see the world the same way. Like they see it as perfect. They're supposed to be perfect. I don't think they're getting enough information about reality, and that not everybody is like, not even the social media influencers are really perfect. How do we get that message across to those young people, especially in the communities that you're trying to reach, because they're already going to feel isolated? So how do we do that in this crazy social media world?
Yes, that's a good point. So, of course, I try to do it through filmmaking and then making the film as accessible as possible. I think we can all do it in our own way through our own social media. Of course, social media is sort of the democratization of information, for better, for worse. So most people have access to social media. And so being able to kind of do it in our own ways with what we're doing. I've seen on your social media, you just have these really great wisdom bits it seems that you're sort of doing that on your social media, where it's just sort of, you're talking about imposter syndrome and, hey, kind of breaking the stigma. And so I think being able to sort of do it yourself in the small ways you can, in the ways you can on your own social media. As a filmmaker, I have done that on the screen. And then just as content creators, of course, we can do that and make a video, and then folks can see it. It's we can all do it in our own way. And certainly the digitization of film, of content, of videos, having that be really accessible on social media and various platforms, video platforms, has kind of allowed people to really make their own statement in their own way. That's sort of the best you can do. And I think the people that you have around you, if you have youth around you, there's a way you can just model and demonstrate and help gently guide them, or just be maybe an empathetic model, be an empathetic person around them. So, sometimes it's our own close circle or community that we can also make a large impact as well.
And I think that ties us back to empathy, because like when you're looking at young people and you want to feel that empathy, try going back to like when you were like 13 and we didn't have all this social media, and how hard it was. And just to be 13 in a normal world when the only people you were trying to impress were like the 100 people in your class, right? And now it's like so much bigger and so much broader. But if you can remember how that felt when you didn't fit in or you didn't feel something, you'll be able to pull that empathy and then put it on steroids, because the kids today have so much more thrown at them. So I think that everything that you're doing and telling these stories is just profound, and it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you for that. And you're so right about that, they're growing up in a world that we didn't grow up in. And it's really important to be aware of how much that may be influencing how they think and feel. I also am a proponent of getting away from the digital distraction, having a real balance with what you're letting yourself ingest, and also being able to be out in the natural world. I live in the North Bay, California, so there's a lot of natural nature around us. But in any way that someone can do that, or encourage someone younger or someone around them that might be, just needing a little pick me up or what have you, or being a friend or a family member or what have you, that connecting to the natural world, there's so much we can learn from the natural world, and that you won't always find in a social media post. That's really important to remember, that we are natural beings at our core, and to connect to the natural world is equally as important as what we do as filmmakers and content creators.
Yeah, absolutely. As a final kind of question for you to ponder and share, and I'm curious what you would want to tell a young person heading into Hollywood to start their career and, full of dreams. What advice do you have?
Be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. It's very easy when you start going along the path to, now, of course, if you're an actor and you need to, transform yourself into a role, that's one thing. But really staying true to yourself, as far as what you will do, what you won't do, really embracing your own uniqueness. I can tell you as a cast, as a director, when I've had actors come into the room, And you can tell that they're very comfortable with themselves. They are, very generous of spirit. They can literally change the matrix in the room. When they come in, they are really at peace with themselves. I think is very important to really know yourself, feed yourself, do the things that you love to do. And also, while you're pursuing your dreams, and hopefully your dream is what you want to be doing, but really constantly feeding your own soul, being around people that also accept and care about you and love you. Those are very important things to really kind of keep you on your own path and keep you really clear about who you are, because that can only benefit you when you're walking in a room and you're auditioning. Or I also am a big proponent of creating your own opportunities. And certainly there's so many, that's one thing we can learn from our next generation here. Boy, not only are so many of them just politically active and smart, but they've really become witch smart about content creation, and they can disseminate really important messages with this new medium, right? Not so much new, but maybe it's more newer to them. And so I learned a lot from the millennials, in my family. And so I just think that really staying true to who you are and allowing that to be your guide, I think it can't be overstated.
Right. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, where would you like them to be? Is LinkedIn the place to go? A website? All the links will be posted with your video and on the article. But just if there's anywhere in particular that you would like to see someone get in touch with you, they're reaching out.
So I'm not on LinkedIn, just so you know. But we're on Facebook and Twitter. Our film, How to Successfully Fail in Hollywood. So there's that, and also our website is funnyfailurefilm.com. And I'm also a storytelling and communications consultant. And so I help filmmakers and brands and businesses with their storytelling. And they're welcome to contact me through there. And they can watch the film or submit to be a guest on our podcast and learn about our new film and development, Courtship. I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about Courtship as well. I want to thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. Your perspective not only enlightens, but inspires listeners to embrace change. And it's so important today. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. Remember, in a world that's constantly in motion, the ability to adapt and grow is not just a skill, it's a necessity. Stay curious, stay informed, and above all, stay driven. Until next time, this is Cynthia Corsetti, Executive Coach from the Care to Lead podcast, hoping that you and all the other leaders to remember that leaders who care to lead.